UFC St. Louis is in the books. And my man Harry Powell is here. We're going to break down that card from top to tail. A decent card overall, if I do say so myself. I mean, there was a little bit of mid-card disappointment that we'll get into as we progress through the fights here. But overall, my general viewing experience was quite enjoyable on Saturday, if I do say so myself. And I think it has to be said that it might not have been if this card had not been in front of a crowd, and a rowdy St. Louis crowd as well. I think they added to this fight card, and I think, it was a stark reminder of how important it is to take these events out of the UFC apex. I mean, look, on paper, this main event between Derek Lewis and Rodrigo Nascimento got absolutely slated online. Absolutely slated, it did when it was announced. But in hindsight, the total live revenue for the gate was 2,400,070, which set a record for the venue, I believe. The crowd was 15,000, almost 16,000 in attendance. So, I mean, the UFC ain't complaining after that main event, and the live crowd certainly weren't complaining. And I mean, look, I think it kind of proves the point, Harry, and it's probably how I wanted to open up today, is that the UFC has kind of achieved, and like those kind of numbers would tell me that the UFC has achieved what it's always wanted to achieve. And all they bring to these areas is those three letters, UFC, and it seems to be selling out the door right now. They are killing it, no matter if there's names on the card or whether there's not names on the card. For, like I said, like a main event that got absolutely slated at the time of its announcement, the fans still lapped up the tickets. The fans still had a good time, and the UFC are laughing all the way to the bank.
100%. Like, I think it's been that way for a little while. COVID had a little bit of a wobble, but it obviously in live events. But I think for the UFC specifically, COVID actually was a blessing, and it was a blessing because the UFC managed to find a way to put cards on. They managed to find a way to continue to grow the brand. And what happened was there was a significant lack of sports, live sports, for a good period of time, and the UFC kept rolling out shows. And what that forced people to do is look at MMA. Right? They needed something to do. There was only so much Netflix. There was only so much this. There was only so much that you could do, and so they pushed towards MMA, and they got to see some of the beauty that MMA can provide. We got some big cards during those COVID times. We had some amazing fights during those COVID times. And so when we're now back in more regular times, it is even more apparent that the UFC has capitalized on the growth that happened in that period. And I agree wholeheartedly that taking shows back to crowds is really, really, really important for the next level of growth. And you're absolutely right that the UFC, those three letters, they mean absolutely everything. The UFC is coming to the UK in July, and it is going to be, it could be Tom Aspinall versus Adorcan, and it will sell out. It doesn't matter what's on the undercard. It could be Paddy Pimblett versus Manan and nothing else on the card, and it would sell out immediately, right? It doesn't matter where the UFC goes or where it takes its product. It has gotten to a point where all they need to do is announce that they're turning up to your city, and it is almost a guaranteed sellout.
Yeah, we've seen that in a couple of cards before. Like, it almost selling out, or a massive amount of tickets being sold even before main events have been announced and everything. So, look, at UFC is absolutely balling right now. And speaking of balling, Derek Lewis, balls were hot right after his big win over Rodrigo Nascimento. Big overhand right in round 3. Took out the Brazilian in what was a pretty substandard fight, really. Before that, nothing really to write home, nothing too much to analyze about this fight, really, if we're being honest. But from what you've seen of the performance from Derek Lewis, look, he's got to be going out there, even at this stage of his career, and beating guys like Nascimento, to be honest. And he did it probably in a lot harder way than he could have in the main event. Harry, your thoughts on the main event itself?
So I was I wasn't really impressed. I was going to try and make a nice
No,
angle.
don't. We want raw bastard.
I wasn't really impressed. I thought I will give Derek Lewis props that he initiated some grappling and he was looking to land dirty boxing and he was looking to land knees at the middle and whatever. But he's just shit anywhere outside of the pocket, basically. Like, he's trying to be technical, and I understand that, there's an element of that he's going to need, and there's an element of that he needs to learn. But as soon as the fight hit the mat, it was just garbage. Just for both of them, garbage. Nascimento did nothing really. The first round, he got to mount and landed some shots, fine. But other than that, just didn't really do a ton. Took his back in one of those rounds, did absolutely nothing. Didn't try and choke him once, didn't land any shots, just fucking horrendous. And then eventually, Derek Lewis did Derek Lewis things, and that was, lads, I'm just gonna punch his face in loads until he falls over, and not a lot else that I can say. Like,
there isn't really, not really. It's like, I think with Derek Lewis, it's like, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, it's that kind of a. I think Sean and Graham kind of covered it perfectly on the big podcast this week. When he tries to become a better fighter, it actually makes him a worse fighter. When he tries to get technical, when he tries to get, like, opening up this fight, looking for a double underhook, body lock, inside trip. Get out of here. Just start unleashing your big right hand, son. And it took him until round 3 to figure that out. And, through the help and advice of his corner too, it has to be said.
Yeah, I think it's a bit too late for Derek Lewis now. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, he comes against any half decent opposition, he's Dunsky, like, but there's still some value to him going out there and knocking lads unconscious too. You know what I mean? And he'll pick up another good few fights because of that, and seems to have I'm reluctant to call it star power, but he seems to have a bit more hype around his name than maybe your standard fighter that would be headlining a UFC fight night.
Yeah, like, what I mean by it's too late is it's too late for him to kick on and change his game dramatically.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He is perfect for this type of card. We have said it before. How many main events has he had? Like 10 or something like that? And it's all been these sorts of fight. Obviously, he fought DC for the title, and so whatever. But like, he is perfect prime candidate where you chuck him in against an average heavyweight, and the chances of him knocking the fuck out of that guy is relatively high, right? Because he just has to land once cleanly, and then your man's doing the stanky leg, as we saw with Nascimento. And so, he's good value for what he is, but I certainly don't think he could go back to the gym, turn it all around, and come out this technical, clean, crisp striker with some good takedown defense and maybe a couple of trips. It's just too late.
Yeah, big time. Next for Lewis, anyone on the top of your head that you'd like to see him? I mean, we don't even have to get too inventive. I think we should be like, let's put Derek Lewis in some fun fights now to see out the rest of his career, rather than try and construct another kind of title run that, once he gets to that high level opposition, is not going to be able to achieve any which way. So are you in the kind of fun fight kind of mode for Derek Lewis right now at this stage of his career?
Is it too wild to say, can we see Despaigne versus Derek Lewis?
Way too wild. And I'll tell you exactly why. In a little bit. Like, he doesn't deserve it, Despaigne, after losing. I think that would have been a fight if he had won. Maybe they would have pushed him up, but I have my thoughts. I have my thoughts on that guy. Like, I mean, if you want to see Despaigne, well, I'm kind of talking myself into that right now. I mean, I like the style. I mean, it's a guy that's not going to take him down, so. But I just don't think he's at the level of quality even for Derek Lewis, Despaigne now. But anyway, I digress. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But I definitely think that style of fight would be one that would suit Derek Lewis, and definitely Despaigne as well. But we'll move on to the co-main event. Joaquin Buckley took out Nursultan Ruzhabayev by unanimous decision. Not really that impressed by this performance. I think Ruzhabayev was difficult and awkward, and Joaquin Buckley couldn't really figure him out. didn't feel comfortable in committing on shots all that much, was probably worried that he made a big deal about asking for this fight and really didn't want to take too many risks in trying to finish the fight in case he would have got caught and lost, which, could have happened against Ruzhabayev. But a pretty lackluster co-main event overall, Harry, really, wasn't it?
Buckley won because he was a better athlete, full stop. That's it. He was able to close distance, cut angles, and use and this is inherently disrespectful, but he tried to emulate that Mike Tyson square stance, bob and weave, quickly get inside the pocket, make your head nice and elusive off that center line and throw big shots. The difficulty is that Ruzhabayev found a knee early and tried to land it loads. Ruzhabayev then was just reduced to the knee and didn't really throw anything else. And then Buckley, when he was getting hit with the knee, would just get a takedown and then do very little on the ground and then get back up and do the same thing. And in the first sort of minute and a half, Buckley looked good, landed some clean shots, landed some nice shots. And then when he saw that the knee was coming, he made no attempt to make a tactical adjustment in order to move his way around the knee. He was like, I'll just eat it and take your man down, and then let's just fucking see what happens. And look, it got Ruzhabayev tired enough in trying to get up so many times that Buckley was able to wear him down enough that he could win a decision. And look, again, a fighter, their first imperative objective is to win. Doesn't matter how they win, they just have to win. And so he won, and fair play to him, but not a good performance. Not a good performance from Joaquin Buckley. And sorry, last thing on Joaquin Buckley. Like, in his last couple of fights, I've been impressed with how he's tried to use less athleticism and more technical ability. This fight, he just threw it all the way back out the window.
Yeah, and it was very frustrating for me to watch as well, to be honest, because I can see that potential in there in Buckley. And I think what makes you a great fighter is, and we may disagree on this, but I've been very vocal on this before in fighters taking risks. You've got to have somewhat level of risk. Obviously, we got into it before over, Izzy's lack of want to take a risk sometimes in fights. It's just a style that I like to see from fighters. It's like where they go to the dark side, you take a risk to try and create something special. Look, on the other side of that is that, you maybe create those risks and you'll be on the wrong side of what happens as well if you overcommit and stuff like that. Like I said, it's always easy for me to criticize where I'm sitting here, but I can only like what I like, and I like fighters that do take a risk. What wasn't risky in the performance was definitely fucking risky in his call out after the fight, which was absolutely nonsensical, if we're being honest. Calling out Conor McGregor, I mean, come on, what is this, fucking 2019 or 20 again? Like, I have no idea what he did there, but maybe I'll round off before I hand it back to you if you want to go into any more technical analysis on the fight. But I don't know, overall, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but Joaquin Buckley annoys me a little bit. He annoys me the way he carries on a little bit, and he annoyed me. I can take someone being a little bit annoying if you can translate that into a good performance, but he didn't even manage that. And I know, big moment in his hometown in a co-main event slot. I would be more forgiveful on the lack of risk in that scenario, but I mean, what's going to make you drive up the rankings is if you go out there and you lay it all on the line and you take out Ruzhabayev and you get that rapturous applause, and then you call out a legit contender after you get that win. And I just think that he missed the boat on a couple of those things as well, Harry.
Agreed. I think maybe this is vastly disrespectful and maybe this is an incorrect take, but we say all the time that when we watch a fighter fight, we are also able to see elements of their personality, elements of who they are. And it feels as though there is an element, and every fight is delusional, but there seems to be a larger element of delusion in Joaquin Buckley. One, he made the big hoo-ha about fighting on St. Louis. Dana White gives him a fight that is over and back, an okay styles matchup for him, but could have been a slippery slope. He goes out and he fights the way he fights. And that is certainly not a way for you to be celebrated by Dana White, right? We know and have seen that Dana White is far more akin to your method of thinking, where we've given you an opportunity. Okay, we obviously want you to win now, right? And we don't want to see you go out there and lose, but it is very important that you go out and perform. And it's the performances that grant you the goodwill within Dana White's good books. And I just to add to that, if you're going to call out Conor McGregor, right? If anyone is going to call out Conor McGregor, the way that you even remotely have an opportunity to do so is that you go out and you hit another Impa Kasanganai type knockout and you say, I've got one of those for Conor McGregor. It's going to do absolutely nothing. It's going to do absolutely nothing. You're not getting anywhere near close to Conor McGregor. However, if you're going to attempt some sort of that fuckery, you have to have something to back it up. And as of right now, Joaquin Buckley has nothing that would entice somebody like Conor McGregor. And so it's just a real waste of a massive opportunity for him. If he'd have gone out and said, I want Sean Brady, I want...
Well, he came out in the press conference after, Harry, and called out Gilbert Burns. Like, I mean, there's a perfect call out for straight after the fight. Just fucking do it after the fight. I mean, I just can't make head. There was one moment in the third round, I believe, where, look, at Rushaboyev is a potential banana skin. You know, he could have lost if he didn't cross his T's and dot his I's. There was power there, but it was clear at the end of round 2 and in round 3 that Rushaboyev's gas tank was gone, and he was there for the taking. Now, Rushaboyev was very wary of the power and the athleticism of Joaquin Buckley, and he chose to kind of fight on the outside. And I think Joaquin Buckley had a very big difficulty in trying to get inside to land his shots. A lot of them were swinging and missing. He was using that duck and roll and that hook movements to try and get in the inside, and it wasn't working for him. And he was getting frustrated to the point of the fact where he like stopped and shrugged his shoulders and waved Rushaboyev on. You don't do that. Like, if nothing is happening for you, you've got to go and make something happen. You know what I mean? It ain't going to happen itself. So, like, little small attitudes like that, you know, they're little mini red flags for me and Joaquin Buckley and his progression up the welterweight rankings. His age right now is, if I can bring it up real quickly, 30 years of age. So he's coming into a really important phase of his career now. And if he's going to make a charge up the welterweight rankings, I think, you know, a slight little attitude change, a little bit more self-thought and planning on what you're going to do, because you get very limited time to utilize a microphone in the UFC, and to call out Conor McGregor is just it's a farce, you know. And overall, what I wanted to say about Joaquin Buckley is that he's a bit of an idiot, just a bit of an idiot, and I hope that he can kind of figure things out. Any final thoughts? Shall we move on?
I think we can move on.
Let's do it. I was going to call out the time there now. We're 18 minutes in. Carlos Ulberg versus Alonzo Menafield was the next fight on tap in the lightweight heavyweight division. I'm going to ask you one question here, Harry. I'm going to ask you one question here. If you are a guy that is going in to fight a fighter with the caliber and with the dangers that Carlos Ulberg has, what do you not do?
Sprint headfirst across the cage.
Exactly. That's exactly what you don't do. So the winner of the worst fight IQ on the card goes to Alonzo Menafield for running straight across the field. Across the cage onto a punch from Carlos Ulberg. The fight was over within 12 seconds of the first round, and I know your head was in your hands. My head was certainly in my hands here. Not too much to kind of discuss here, but I would say you were crying to the MMA gods over the game plan of Alonzo Menafield. I just don't understand sometimes. Was it nerves? You know, sometimes you look at, sometimes you're going in there against somebody and you know they've got some big dangers, and maybe the nerves get a hold of you and maybe you go into kind of self-sabotage mode. Maybe he kind of walked into that cage, you know, wanting to get that fight over and done with as soon as possible because the nerves were so high, and maybe he was a little bit anxious about the potential outcome, which proved to be quite bad for Alonzo Menafield. Sometimes I really struggle to kind of put my head into what Alonso Menefield was talking and thinking, thinking about in that moment. I don't know. Can you kind of put it into words, Harry? Because I certainly can't. Just very, very bad fight IQ, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't even think Carlos Solberg's all that dangerous. Like, he's a good striker. He's long. He hits hard, but that's almost half of the light heavyweight division. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not like
Carlos. Yeah, and
Carlos.
I don't mean to be talking Ulberg up like he's this killer, but like he's a guy that he's known for power in his hands, and I think that Menefield just played right into his strong points by doing what he did.
I mean, I watched it back a number of times because why not? It's 12 seconds, and it actually looks like Menefield does damage to himself when he fucking headbutts the cage. Like he hits the cage wall so hard that he's already sort of staggering back a little bit. And then Ulberg is obviously so surprised that he's in this specific situation. He doesn't even pick his punches cleanly. He just fucking wails on him. And then he lands a left hook. Menefield's all types of hurt. And we get to where we get to. Like, Menefield is a good athlete. We have seen him look like a good athlete in other performances. He's a little bit like Joaquin Buckley at 185 and at 205, sorry. And I honestly, I don't know what to tell you. I do not know what to tell you. Like, I couldn't even be angry with him because there is a level of fight IQ that we just don't ever really see in the UFC.
Yeah.
It was that.
And like, you're talking about Menefield here, Harry, is coming in after like 4 wins and a draw in these last 5 fights. So he's coming in there high in confidence. He would be arguably gone against a better striker than Ulberg in his last fight against Justin Jacoby, which he got the unanimous decision win. I can't even mark it down on anything else other than a moment of madness, to be honest, really. And I don't know whether the moment got to him or whether his nerves are up. I just really can't picture it, but colossal error. But look, at Ulberg got the job done. Fair play to him. He continues his long win streak up to 10-1 within the division now, Harry. He is on a 6-fight win streak, and he's definitely due a step up in competition as well, isn't he? Would you think?
Yeah, has he fought Dustin Jacoby? Because if he hasn't, I'd like that fight.
Yeah, no, he has not yet. He has not yet. So that would be a good fight for him. I actually do like that fight quite a bit. Yeah, that's perfect for him. Look, he'll be almost ready to go next weekend on this card this weekend too, to spice it up a little bit. You know what I mean? 12 seconds, get the boys in there.
For sure. Why not?
That's it. Dustin Jacoby for Carlos Ulberg. Fair play to them both. Moving on. Diego Ferreira absolutely destroys Mateus Rebecki. 3rd round, ground and pound. The fight probably should have been stopped before that, to be honest. It was one of the worst beatdowns that I have seen in recent memory inside the octagon, to be honest, in terms of, Ferreira just absolutely turned it on. And it's not like he pulled this performance out of nowhere. This is the type of fighter that Diego Ferreira is, Harry, and he really put his full strength of skills up against Rebecki, who just was outmatched. This fight was about competitive for about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, and then Ferreira just slowly started pulling away, and his boxing, he's just destroyed Rebecki with his boxing throughout. How impressed were you with the performance?
I was very impressed with Diego Ferreira. Glad that he got a bonus. He deserved one. Just unreal altogether. Like, at the age he is, the experience level he is, the sort of ride that he's been on with the promotion, to turn in performances still like that against a good guy in Rebecki, like.
Well, the UFC are looking at that with, the chance to give Rebecki a name, a well-known name. And if we're being real, and they'll never tell us this, but look, I think the UFC were looking at that matchup with looking at a chance to give Rebecki a little bit of a push in the 155-pound division. It didn't happen the way they wanted it to happen, though.
No, like, Rebecki has a good left hook, good power in his hands, a wicked arm bar, some good ground skills, and Ferreira was just like, yeah, all that's cool, and I like it, and it's pretty and stuff, but what about these jabs and right hands, big man? Do you fancy them? And personally, I would have liked to have seen the corner stop it between the second and the third. at the point that we got to at the end of the second, the eyes were almost already closed. They were leaking badly. Rebecca certainly couldn't see anywhere near as well as he was going to have to be able to see. And then the third round was just a career-changing demolition from Diego Ferreira. Like, there were a number of moments where there were interesting grappling exchanges, but by and large, Diego Ferreira just absolutely smashed the shit out of him. There's just two things that I want to note from a technical perspective. The first one was Rebecca had managed to get Diego Ferreira down and had sat him into a chest-to-chest half guard. Diego Ferreira had managed to pummel himself an underhook, and he used a knee lever or a John Wayne sweep, whichever people like to call it, and tilted Rebecca over just as he was about to throw a shot. Now, that's just impeccable knowledge of timing from Diego Ferreira to be able to time when a fighter is about to throw a shot at you and attempt an off balance. That allowed him to get back up to his feet. That was the first one. That was in round 2. In round 3, there was just an absolutely gorgeous 4-point slash back body lock breakdown. So Rebecca has Diego Ferreira in a back body lock. Diego Ferreira reaches with his right hand through and grabs the right leg of Rebecca and then steps his own right leg behind Rebecca and almost hits like a backwards judo type chop sweep. Then lands on top, circles himself to reverse half guard, finds himself a far side underhook, and then pummels himself out of reverse half guard by slamming some elbows into Rebecca to distract him. And I'm like, that's
just experience 101, Harry, isn't it? And being known what to do in those kind of situations. And where a lot of the other damage was done was on the feet by Diego Ferreira, and it was just countering, like looping, reaching hooks with straight 1-2s. And it's like sometimes the simple fundamentals are the most effective in fights. And Diego Ferreira just had all the fundamentals down in this fight, to be honest, and massively impressed. Like, I mean, we're not going to get excited about Diego Ferreira. He's 40 years of age right now. He what he did is he gave himself probably another couple, 3 or 4 fights within the UFC with a performance like that, having, coming into this fight, a lot of pressure on his back, having lost his last 3. But all against high level opposition. And I think, we say, what does going in against high level opposition do for you? Well, I think the results were right on show for even someone of Diego Ferreira's age, in kind of showcasing. We've seen a massive knockout with Michael Johnson in his last fight, and then another destruction in this fight. And he's not going to be any easy out for any up and comers that are coming into that lightweight division now, is Diego Ferreira. Who would you like to see him in there next to, Harry?
Bobby Green.
Oh, King Bobby. I love it. Yeah, that's a great fight. Have they fought before? Two of those boys are around a long time. Have they fought? I don't think they have. Bing, bing. You're on the money, son. On the money. Love it. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. We were very excited about Sean Woodson and Alex Caceres in the featherweight division. Did the fight live up to expectations for you, Harry?
I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit more competitive than it was. I thought Sean Woodson just played a really, 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 really sound game plan. He chopped the legs early and very, very, very often, which is a very smart game plan with somebody of the with the movement of Alex Caceres. And then he just slowly chipped away at the jab, slowly chipped away at the right hands, and really frustrated Alex Caceres. I was impressed with Sean Woodson's defensive movement. I was impressed with his up close and personal pocket control. He would often roll with a shot, find an underhook, shoulder post him away. He would find a really nice, he'd pop his head off to the right-hand side, land an uppercut, and then push Alex Caceres away by his chest or whatever it is. He was just in control from very, very, very early on. Now, there was about a minute and a half left in the third round, and Caceres really understood that this fight was running away from him, and so poured everything he had out on Sean Woodson. And
well, you have to give him credit for doing that.
100%. And Sean Woodson was in some spots where he certainly wasn't comfortable, like Caceres landed some really lovely combinations and some really lovely unorthodox spinning attacks, but Sean Woodson was just clean enough.
about that pressure, sometimes I often think to myself, and I kind of probably do have the answer to the question that I'll ask, but I'll ask you anyway. Sometimes you have to wonder the way you seen Caceres kind of pour it on at the end and how difficult it was for Woodson to be able to deal with it. You kind of have to ask yourself, why didn't he try to do that a little bit sooner? Was he worried about his gas tank? Was he worried about getting countered? But I mean, sometimes you just have, like, that's what I'm saying. You're talking about making risks. Well, you can take risks to kind of better your situation if it isn't going well for you as well, and kind of go a little bit outside of the game plan, because the ability to switch it up. Look, Caceres knew at the end of the second or the third round, halfway through, he needed to change it up, and I think if he had made that decision a little bit earlier in the fight, I think it would have been that maybe close knit fight that we were expecting, Harry. Thoughts on that?
Could have also got him knocked the fuck out.
100%, and that's the fine line that you do play as well. Excellent response. Let's talk about the defensive movement of Sean Woodson for quite a bit, for a little bit. I liked he showed kind of 2 or 3 different styles of defensive movement. Upper body feinting, lots of upper body feinting, lots of movement with the hands, kind of mimicking Alex Caceres' style, and that was done excellently, I would imagine, to throw Caceres off, where it's like, it feels like you're looking in the mirror, and you can kind of actually get like a little bit hypnotized when an opponent does that to you and kind of mimics your style. We also saw excellent Philly shell defense from him at times, and we just saw that lateral movement as well, and that in and out movement that we always see, that wide stance, just getting out of the pocket, controlling the distance from Sean Woodson. His footwork and his movement is beautiful to watch when he's in full flow, Harry.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons why I wrote the spotlight on either his debut or his second fight was you don't get to see guys that size at featherweight move like he moves. You just don't see it. You don't see it. You don't see somebody that's as loose as he is, somebody that's as fluid as he is, somebody that's as well put together as he is. And he has a very unorthodox type of striking, a very elusive type of striking. Obviously, Max Holloway has a similar frame to Sean Woodson, but is a far, far, far different type of striker, far more technical pressure heavy, whereas Sean Woodson is extremely elusive and very, very open with the way he fights. And what it turned out is Alex Caceres thought he was going to be able to go in and out awkward Sean Woodson. And Sean Woodson said, we got tricks for you as well, my friend. I think the other thing from a defensive standpoint that has to be stated, and the only thing I think that's missing, is he always harasses the hands.
Yeah, a lot of hand fighting there, a lot of yeah.
Right.
What does it like when if I kind of understand, hand fighting and the importance of it. Like, explain the importance of hand fighting for anyone who may be listening and wants to know.
Sure. So for the most part, offensive and defensive hand fighting occur because it removes the pattern of rhythm. It removes your spatial understanding of what is available and when it is available. When you're in the gym, you are very used to throwing shots naturally from a certain position of a guard. It is very rare that, especially for a fighter that's been around as long as Alex Caceres has, you throw shots naturally. Now, your guard is just part of who you are. Where your hands are just part of who you are. And so if you're thinking about, okay, I'm in the right spot now to throw my jab, and Sean Woodson parries it down, the jab's not there anymore. Equally, if you're about to make an angle or close distance and Sean Woodson parries your lead hand down, you have to worry, am I about to walk into a left hook? Am I about to walk into a right hand? One of the first sort of options that was shown to me when I was making a very short, non-existent MMA career was, if you're fighting a southpaw, one of the first things that you do is parry the lead hand down and throw a jab over the top of it. Not even to land it, but just to say, by the way, this is an avenue for me to just pop a shot in there and to ask you which side you're going to start walking towards. Because if you're going to start walking towards my power hand, I've got something for you. And if you're going to walk the other way, I've got a check left hook for you. And so, from a offensive perspective, it starts to really give problems to your partner.
Yeah, you're looking to try and get your opponent to reset as much as possible and to get out of that flow state. A lot of people, you might think that when you're in there and you're kind of exchanging, and yes, there is some level of thought, but when you go into that free thinking flow state, those shots just happen. You just see something and you make it happen. But when you're hand fighting, when you're kind of feinting, when you're doing all of that jazz, you are forcing your opponent to kind of reset, think too much, so thinking too much when you're inside there is it's kind of a strange way to say it, but when you're thinking too much in there, it's almost a bad thing. And ideas of feints and hand fighting, I think Sean Woodson does such an excellent job in doing that. We can't say that any of the next two fighters did an excellent job, to be honest, Harry, because my heart was broken watching Valdez Cortez Acosta take out my guy Despain in less than exciting fashion. Look, there's two big things here, right? Number one, Robles Despain is no good with his back on the mat. He has no takedown ability. He is like a duck out of water whenever the fight gets taken down. Valdez Cortez Acosta figured this out early, got the fight down early, dominated the fight to a unanimous decision, but didn't get the finish, couldn't push on for the finish. And I mean, just awful on both counts, to be honest. And I sent you, we were just messaging exchanging as this fight came on. I sent you a video just displaying my disgust at this fight. And, Dana White is out there giving it shit after the fight, but at the end of the day, you guys put it together. What did you expect? You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. I don't understand the way of thinking. And of course, you're always going to bear the brunt of Dana White when you have a fight like this. But at the end of the day, the UFC put this fight together. You know what I mean? I would have liked to see Robles Despain in there with someone like Big Baby Miller. He's not even at the, we saw Valdez Cortez Acosta pass the veteran test already with Andrei Arlovsky. You know what I mean? He was going to come in here, and look, there was slight dangers there with Despain, but nothing was working. We're trying fucking slow lead leg high kicks and like low-handed 1-2s for if you're Despain. And that's so easy to counter against. You're just going to level change. You're going to take down. That's what Cortez Acosta did, and it's just resulted in an absolutely dreadful fight overall. And it took the wind out. This fight card from the prelims was pretty damn good. This took all the wind out of my sails, and it took me a while to kind of get back going and into the card after this fight happened. I told you not to watch it. Did you?
Did I fuck?
I love it. Well, there you go. That's the breakdown. Just terrible. Nothing really to break down. A guy that could not defend a takedown, and a guy who took the fight down and was unable to finish it in 15 minutes. Let's move on to something more worthwhile. And I would be lying to you, Mr. Powell, if I was to say that Chase Hooper was going to be ever on your famous Severe Spotlight on SevereMMA.com every Monday. I wake up in the morning. I get on a Monday morning. I lie on the bed. I see the Severe Spotlight. I click on it. I give it a little bit of read. What a perfect start to the week for me in the bed, listening or looking at Harry Powell waxing lyrical about the best fighter of the card on the card for the weekend. And I was looking at a couple of different fighters here. I mean, if I, we'll talk about this guy next. I thought it would have been full sure Esteban Ribovic for his great knockout, but nonetheless, it was Chase Hooper who went out there and destroyed Verislav Borshev and destroyed. And you know what? I thought he's spot on for doing that. You've got that spot on. And are we kind of coming to a small bit of coming of age with Chase Hooper in terms of seeing him turn the corner ever so slightly in, him being able to manage above average competition within the UFC, Harry? Why did you decide that the spotlight should have shone on him after his performance on Saturday night?
Chase Hooper showed us for the first time that he's a mixed martial artist. And for that, being 6 fights deep or whatever he is in the UFC already, that is something that we absolutely must sit up and take notice. Chase Hooper was brought into the UFC and very quickly sort of became almost a meme because he looked like Ben Askren's little brother or son or whatever it is. And we all had a good laugh about that, and we all had a great time. But we forgot that he's still a fighter, and he's still looking at trying to make a career out of this, and a successful career at that. Then it very quickly took a downturn because he just took some hellacious beatings and either managed to dig a win out from somewhere with the very, very, very good top grappling that he has, or he just lost decisions or got finished. And so a lot of people, including myself, were asking for Chase Hooper to go back to a regional type show and just hone his craft a little bit more. If it was on a developmental deal from the UFC, that's fine, no problem. However, on Saturday night, he proved all of us wrong, and he showed us that with the right time, the right attitude, the right matchmaking, I guess.
That's the most important thing. Like, I mean, you're talking about regional competition. He's got a regional level competition in Borshev, in my opinion. But that's the way he should be matched right now. So.
Maybe, like, I think with Borshev, right? Borshev, we have seen against Mark Diakasey just absolutely wrestle fucked him, right? Great performance from Diakasey. There was another fellow who beat him. I've forgotten his name, but that was largely a wrestling display as well. And so we know where the holes are. That's fine. But he took Chris Duncan to fucking school on the Contender Series and then came out and in his first win got a hellacious knockout. And so we knew that there was power in his hands, right? Chase Hooper had shown us previously that he wasn't even at that level. And coming in, I was saying, I'm worried about this for Chase Hooper. That's what we said. We said we were worried about this for Chase Hooper because Borshev does have some power. He could throw shots, and Chase Hooper takes a lot of shots. And Chase Hooper came out, and he looked comfortable in his stance, and he set the tone immediately. He threw long. He threw important combinations. He looked at leg kicks. He managed distance really well. Now, okay, there was still some elements of the old Chase Hooper whereby he got clipped a little because he was entering the pocket at the wrong time and looking for takedowns at the wrong time, whatever.
Turned his back on a few occasions as well, which is a no-no too. But, like, I mean, how shocked were you when that big overhand right landed in the first round and you saw Borshev crash into the mat? I was like, oh, shit. Because it's crazy when you see moments like that, because when you're picturing how a fight is going to go, you could actually picture that going the opposite way than it did. And it was, Hooper being on the receiving end and crashing down. But it was such a well-timed shot, wasn't it, Harry?
So I wasn't shocked. I was shocked to see him crumble. I wasn't shocked to see Hooper land it, though, because he'd been looking for it. He had constantly been parrying the left hand of Borshev, parrying. He'd been throwing a left straight right down the middle, left straight right down the middle, left straight right down the middle. And two combinations before, he had looked to level change as he was parrying that right hand, with that right hand, sorry. And the moment that Chase Hooper dipped his head after parrying, Borshev was like, oh, he's definitely going for my lead leg. He's definitely shooting on a single. And then when the overhand left came, Borshev's body said, oh no, it's a shot. It's going to be a straight because that's where he's been throwing for the first 2.5 minutes. And then the overhand left came and just perfectly placed right in between the two lines of the jaw and right next to the temple. And Borshev goes down. And then Chase Hooper just absolutely mauls him. Just some really, really, really phenomenal grappling, phenomenal damage on top. And by the time we got to the third, fair play to Borshev. The toughness for him to continue to fight out of those bad positions was excellent. But Hooper had seen that DARS from 6 million miles away. As soon as Borshev attempted to get an underhook and didn't start building up, Hooper knew exactly what was going to happen. And the finish in of itself, okay, slightly controversial, but to me, it was a tap.
Oh, me too. Oh, yeah. I looked at the replay. I looked at the reaction when it happened immediately. I was like, oh, shit, do we have a bit of controversy here? But then I looked at the replay and there was a full-on Brazilian tap. That was it. It was a full-on Brazilian tap. And I thought the referee did an excellent job to kind of come in and stop that fight. And I look at fair play to Chase Hooper. Like, I'd him written off, but he's after making a good comeback there now. It's important. We need those ingredients to we have to allow. I think most of our biggest fears with Chase Hooper was that he was going to get absolutely mauled against higher level opposition if the UFC threw him to the wolves. And I think that kind of happened a little bit. And you look back at Edmund Shabazian, which had happened to, and how much had taken out of him, and you just don't want to see that with a guy like Chase Hooper as well. And even with this win, we just shouldn't be getting too excited whatsoever. I mean, we're talking about using your mic time and having good call outs in Wacky and Buckley. Chase Hooper wrote the book on that on Saturday night. Great win, calls out Paddy Pimblett. What a great stylistic match for him, and what a great stylistic matchup for Paddy Pimblett as well. It's like, it's almost the perfect fight, although I think Paddy has probably advanced a little bit too much to really take that fight right now. But I think it's a fight that makes sense for both of these guys so far in their career. Would you agree with that?
I think it's the perfect matchup. And it's the perfect matchup because Paddy needs somebody he can beat. And if they go and drop Hanato Moicano in Manchester, Paddy's going to lose. Likely, Paddy is going to lose. And if they put Chase Hooper in there, Paddy has a fantastic chance of winning, right?
Yeah.
Equally, if Chase Hooper, let's say July is a quick turnaround for Chase Hooper, but he didn't take a ton of damage in that fight. And if he does want to turn around for Manchester, I'm sure he possibly can 8 weeks or so from now. Chase Hooper's still got time to get better in those 8 weeks. And if what it feels like is he's on a good momentum tear, he's building, he's adding skills. Those skills worked in the fight. What do they say about footballers? Footballers don't get tired if they're winning, It's not difficult to get into the training room if you're winning, and if you're winning well, and if you're implementing new skills. And I think it's an absolutely fantastic call out from Chase Hooper. Absolutely fantastic. I would like to see the UFC make it, frankly, because I don't think you need, as the UFC, to give Paddy Pimblett somebody like a Hanato Moicano. You don't need to do that. You can turn around and you could back out those highlight reels of Chase finishing people. You can run all the memes about him being Ben Askren's son and this and that and the next thing. And it sells itself, right? The UFC, as we talked about before, the 3 letters are going to turn up in Manchester and the arena is going to sell out immediately.
Indeed. Chase Hooper taking everything that you work for, Harry Powell, and creating those matchmaker. He did everything for you. Moving on, Esteban Rivovic, knockout of the year contender over Terence McKinney, 37 seconds. Frightening knockout. So well set up. Talk me through the finish, Harry.
It was madness from the start to the end, frankly. Terence McKinney wanted to come out and just really, really put a stamp of authority on it. And I think, frankly, that was what he needed to do. Ribovic is a really, really ferocious fighter. But Ribovic was like, big man, we could do this. We can really, really do this if you want. And he'd seen the right high kick, but was just waiting for the right time to time it. He forced Terence McKinney to reset with a nice straight shot. And then he fakes with the right hand, comes up top. And that is the cleanest shin to jaw that we have seen in a long, long time. And I must say, fair play to Ribovic, because he could have followed up with shots. But as soon as that shot connected, he immediately took a step back. He knew exactly what was happening. And McKinney had absolutely no idea where he was or what the fuck had just happened to him. And it was really, really exemplary sportsmanship from Ribovic. Fantastic stuff.
How excited can we get about him, Harry?
Not very, to begin with. I think we need to see far, far more seasoning. Finishing Terence McKinney has become sort of a thing, right, over the last little while.
He has a killer be killed mentality, and it's getting killed is a thing that's happening more often than the latter, to be honest.
So I think we need to see Ribovic in with somebody that is going to push him, right, and is going to answer some questions. What's the grappling like against a good grappler? What's the striking like against somebody that's going to stand on the outside and try and outpoint you? That's a bit elusive. That's a bit, that's a bit more technical maybe than they are power hungry. And so I think if we can answer some of those questions, and those questions early enough, then we can start to make some more assessments about Mr. Ribovic. But put it this way, I will absolutely not miss his next fight.
28 years of age, 13-1. How quickly do we want to move him up here, and who do we want to put him against? You asked the question, right? How he's going to do against the grappler. We saw Mintabek Orlby last week put in a dominant performance. Would that be a guy that would tickle your fancy against Ribovic next to kind of test out and see how his grappling is? Who would you like to see him in there next with?
So I'd like to see him actually against Faris Ziam.
Not really a guy that's going to really test your wrestling, but I like
That's
that
fine.
fight.
That's fine. I think what we do with Ribovic, if I was the UFC, I want to see whether Ribovic can do the striking technically and still get a result. Faris Ziam, we know, can do a little bit of everything. Can do a little bit of everything. He can be elusive on the feet. He's long. He can hit hard. He's technical. His striking's decent. And he's a name in the UFC. And so you come off a McKinney win. If you go in and you get a win over Faris Ziam, now we know what the ceiling is, especially if he goes out and looks really good in doing it. Then we can start saying, okay, well, what's Thiago Moises doing as somebody that can do a bit of the grappling? We could even, and I don't like this necessarily, but Diego Ferreira is a name. That's the veteran test if he needs it. And I know it's given him Bobby Green, but that's a veteran test as and when he needs it. And,
maybe that comes in another fight or two, perhaps, with him being 28 and still only, relatively young in his career, only 14 fights right now. But lots of interesting fights there for him. And I think, those future tests will kind of prove how good he actually is and how far he'll go within the division. Ireland's own Tabitha Ritchie versus Tisha Pennington. You're looking a bit confused there, Harry. What?
Ireland's own
Tabitha Ritchie. Well, she is going out with Irish boxer Colin Walsh. So
stop.
Is that enough? No. Is that enough to claim her? No?
Not even fucking slightly.
Come on, Jesus. That's harsh. But she went and she fought against Tisha Pennington, formerly Tisha Torres, of course. To a split decision in a very, very close fight. And I mean, one that could have went either way. Curious to hear how you scored this one, Harry.
I scored it 29-28 Pennington.
Yes, I did too. I did as well.
And again, this could be one of those where on the night, the shots just look and feel different cage side. And so, as always, I will certainly put my hands up and give my better judgment to the judges. But watching it, I thought Tisha did better in the pocket exchanges. I thought she landed a little more cleaner, crisper, and more immediately impactful shots than Tabitha Ritchie did. I liked the kicking game from Tabitha Ritchie, but I just didn't see enough to score it 29-28 to Ritchie. I thought all three rounds were very, 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 very close. And there is another fight that we're going to talk about. I think it's immediately after this that was equally as close. But yeah, it was an interesting fight because Tabitha Ritchie's been in a bit of a tear, and we've been really high on Tabitha Ritchie. Now, is it that Pennington is still just her style is very, very difficult to deal with? I was very impressed, by the way, with Pennington's takedown defense. Excuse me, and I don't know. I need to see Ritchie again now, and that's the thing that's exciting, right?
Yeah, I think, it was a tough test for her, and it proved to be a tough test as well. But she got over the line on the night. Yeah, not quite, confident in saying that she deserved the win. A lot of control on the cage, not a lot of scoring with striking. So, look at these things happen. She passed the test. I'd like to see it again. Look, she lost to Lupi Godinez in her last fight. It was an important bounce back win for her. Who would you like to see her in there next against? I mean, we're not going to reach too hard in trying to push her too far up the division, and I imagine the UFC would be the same.
Yeah, I don't know, because her ranking kind of puts us in a position where she kind of has to be somebody. I mean, Luana Pinheiro and Angela Hill are fighting next week. Do we want to do the winner of that? What's Carla Esparza doing these days? We could do that one.
Yasmin Nasindo just picked up. Yeah, I like that fight as well. So look at that. we wish Ireland's Tabitha Ritchie very, very well in her future matchups. And we got to move on to what was the fight of the night. I know you marvel on the beauty of mixed martial arts and the technical aspect of it. Which was all thrown out the window for this fight, really, to be honest. These two boys just decided that they were going to hammer each other for 15 minutes. Well, really hammer each other for 5 minutes and then somewhat try to do so in bursts for 10 minutes after that as well, Harry. Trey Waters, Billy Goff. It was Trey Waters that got the unanimous decision. A conspicuous decision, if I was maybe to pick a little bit of what you were suggesting, or do you agree with it? Or was this the decision you were talking about, or were we talking about Hadley and Johnson?
We were talking about Hadley and Johnson. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd completely forgotten that this fight was in between those two fights. Yeah, just a mad bastard fight all over the shop. I was really impressed with Waters' ability to sort of wade away the pressure of Goff. Goff is just a mad bastard. Had no interest in trying to find a way through the longer reach of Waters technically in any way, shape, or form. He was just going to walk through punches until he got to Waters. And I thought Waters did a really, really solid job at cutting angles when Goff was getting too close, landing shots, landing straights.
I think, in fairness to Waters, he was a guy who was trying to keep it somewhat technical and fight on behind his jab on the outside. But as you said, Billy Goff using his forehead as a punch bag to try and get in the inside, I think it was probably what cost him the fight overall. He did have good spells. That pressure almost worked. Trey Waters and Goff were both out on their feet. And, when you have two fighters both out on their feet, that, one shot could be the big difference there. He couldn't get it off. Trey Waters, an exciting fight. I enjoyed it. They left it all in there. And you got to respect both of them, really, don't you?
100%. And I think for Trey Waters, he'll have learned something about himself in that fight. He'll have learned something that's not a style of pressure that you get in the gym. That's not a style of pressure. That's not a style of output that you get in a spar. If you are having lads sparring like that, they're never going to make UFC performances. They're just not, because you're leaving far too much in the cage. And so in the training cage, sorry. And so I think for Trey Waters, he's realized that he is technical enough to navigate that sort of pressure early. And he's also got the grit and determination enough that as and when he needs to, he can just be like, fuck this. I'm biting down on my gum shield and I'm standing here and I'm going to batter you. And so I think really, really, really useful takeaways for both fighters. And for Billy Goff, I mean, it's an incredibly entertaining style. I worry for his longevity, but for as long as he wants to give us it, it's very entertaining.
It absolutely is. It's kind of one of those things where, like, there'll come a time if he continues to do that where he's going to get absolutely sparked, and that could change him altogether. But definitely agree with what you say. I think Trey Waters and both Billy Goff, they would have answered a lot of questions that they didn't know about themselves coming out of that fight. Tremendous fight. Well-deserved fight of the night as well. And we move on to another fight which was somewhat controversial. I enjoyed watching it play out. We had said that it was going to be a difficult test for Jake Hadley. I think he went out there and proved it wasn't as difficult as we thought it was going to be, because I scored this rounds 1 for Hadley, rounds 2 for Hadley, and rounds 3 for Charles Johnson. And I thought, I'm not going to say it robbery, I thought Hadley can feel very hard done by to not get the nod there on the night, in what was a razor close fight. You can't really argue. John, when you get those close fights, but I really thought this time around that Hadley had done enough. He showed a lot of good things in there. He showed a lot of improvements. And ultimately, I thought he did enough to get his hand raised. What did you think, Harry?
Completely agree. I actually don't think it was that close. Maybe I'm super controversial there, but I thought round 3 was easy to score for Charles Johnson. And I thought
round 1 was super close, to be honest.
It was, but it felt as though the reactions from the shots were larger from Charles Johnson. Hadley then got into his bag round 2, and maybe I'm being a little facetious by saying I'm not sure why it was deemed a close fight, but I scored it confidently for Jake Hadley, even though going in, knowing that Charles Johnson had won the fight. I went in and I said, okay, cool. Let me try and score this as if I'd never watched it or didn't know the results. Sorry. And I relatively comfortably scored it for Jake Hadley. So again, I'm not going to call robbery at all. I think that's silly, but I certainly disagree with the judge's decision on the night.
The judges did score it. Brian Pugillo, round 1 for Jake Hadley, round 2 for Charles Johnson, and round 3 for Charles Johnson as well. And Sal D'Amato had it the same, and Henry Geary had it the same as well. So all judges were aligned with their scoring.
Fair play.
So, yeah, which, sometimes I actually said it to Sean, I think, on one podcast. Sometimes, I think this is the mentality that I have coming into this fight, and I wish that a lot of mixed martial arts fans would have the same mentality, is that when you see scorecards like that where all judges are aligned, that's where we've got to be questioning maybe ourselves rather than questioning the judges. And, that might be worth another look back for me. I thought, Hadley, deserved to get rounds 1 and rounds 2, to be honest, as well. But alas, the judges were aligned. They gave Johnson the nod, and he moves on back to the drawing board for Hadley again. But I mean, somewhat promising performance from him, and even to go out there with a moral kind of victory, thinking that you could have got the nod on a different night. He'll move on. He'll fight some other competition. Would you put him on the Manchester card later on this year? Kind of makes sense to do that.
Yeah, if he's comfortable with his body returning quickly to 125 and everything else, then I see no reason why not. And I'd even give him. I wouldn't necessarily drop the competition level either. I don't think that's necessary. I think we're fine. We're fine staying at the competition level that we're at.
I think if there was a kind of a side light, you have the severe spotlight. If you have the severe side light, it might shine on Veronica Hardy for her performance against JJ Aldrich, which, is not going to get the credit that deserves, because people just probably don't realize how difficult to test JJ Aldrich is when she goes in there. We've seen her time and time again cause fits to lots of up and coming fighters as well. Not in the early stages, that we can say, against Veronica Hardy. Speed, footwork, and shot selection were the keys to victory here for Veronica Hardy, who did fade, it has to be said, in round 3, but her output was sensational in rounds 1 and rounds 2, which seen her go out there and win a unanimous decision on all 3 judges' scorecards. Were you impressed with the performance, Harry?
The rebirth of Veronica Hardy has been absolutely amazing.
Very fun.
Absolutely amazing. Like, testament again to her for reevaluating her career, getting herself in a team and in a position whereby she is in the right place for herself mentally and physically. And the skill acquisition has been dramatic, really, really, really dramatic. I actually don't think it was as much of a drop off from Hardy in the 3rd round as it was JJ finding the adjustments that she needed to get to Veronica Hardy. And I think by that point, Hardy, it was too late in the game for her to make her own adjustments. Obviously, there was certainly fatigue and output problems and whatever. But yeah, I think JJ was like, oh, okay, what I'm going to need to do is be a little bit more on the front foot. I need to break that cadence of Veronica Hardy a little bit more, and then I'll find my shots. And she did find her shot, and she did drop Veronica Hardy, and she did look good in that 3rd round. But I was and have been really, really, really impressed with Veronica Hardy's return. Like, I think obviously time is not on Veronica Hardy's side. 28, oh Jesus, 28. I thought she was older than that. But at 28, we do need to start to maybe push her on a little.
I think this was the fight to kind of see if she was ready for that or not, to be honest. And I would feel that, we will get a little bit of a bump up. And I think the timing is quite right for that with her age. She still has a little bit of time. I would imagine, another 2-3 years, we'll slowly start seeing her maybe hit her physical peak and her fighting peak as well. And it's about fighting the right fights at the right time. Sometimes we talk about how timing is essential in mixed martial arts, and that's definitely going to be the case for Veronica Hardy and her rise up through the rankings in the strawweight division. But a great performance against a really tricky opponent in Aldridge, and fair play to Veronica Hardy. Any final thoughts before we wrap it up, Harry?
I enjoyed the fight card. Good fight card. Shame about the main event. Shame about Despagne and our man Waldo Cortez Acosta. But sure, look, these things happen.
Cortez Acosta, he's right. He goes out there and be disrespectful to a legend like Andrei Arlovsky. Then he goes out and ruins all the excitement around Despagne as well. Not in the good books for me. Valdez Acosta right now, I have to say.
Yeah, fair play.
At BJJ_Harry Powell. At O'Neill MMA is where you'll catch us on social media. Sodia Media? Sodia? No? Anyone for Sodia Media? Maybe we'll start up a new social media. Thank you for listening. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll chat to you soon. We'll see you later on in the week for the Severe Setup.